Command Control presents Hardwire Heartache, Synthetic Love Stories, Episode 10, Part 2. Conclusion.
Son, we love Daphne just as much as you did, but taking a life? You interfered with God's plan. No amount of repenting is going to save you now.
Look, I did what I had to do, what any real parent would. If there's hell to pay for it, then I'll pay for it. But at least Daphne will get to live the life she deserves.
Daniel, honey, she's already asking a lot of questions. How do you think she's going to react when she finds out you haven't been truthful?
Birx's eyes struggled to stay open, his breath slow and deep. He stared at the hand-drawn posters of Sam Spade, Sherlock Holmes, and the Saint, their faded colors betraying the years since young Daniel Birx had drawn them while listening to countless adventures. It had always surprised him that in spite of his parents' disdain for his obsession with detectives and crime stories, they never bothered to take them down.
What's done is done. She might hate me for the rest of her life, but she will be alive. And maybe she can forgive me if I can fix this evil I've caused.
Daphne gently pushed the door open, having just caught the end of the conversation. She looked from Gus, turned away sadly, to Maisie, who sat at the foot of the bed and placed a hand on her son and granddaughter's shoulders.
Why would I hate you, Daddy? What evil?
It's time, Daniel.
Maisie stood up slowly, hands on her knees, and kissed Birx on the forehead before hugging Daphne tightly, holding her gaze for a moment. Daphne recognized the stare she had been getting so often since Radiant City. The feeling of unease roiled up in her stomach, and she looked from Maisie to Birx. Tears were already welling up as she took a quivering breath. Maisie slowly walked towards Gus, and they both quietly left the room.
Hey, kiddo. How much do you remember about the time you got sick?
Isaac and Grell sat in the lab of the Proteus, poring over images and countless lines of code that made up Abira's neural pathways, memory banks, and of course, the massive block of data that was Daphne's consciousness. Abira reclined in the leather chair with wires connected at the base of a skull, ear canals and temples. She stared up at the ceiling with an uncharacteristically hopeless look about her. Rolling her eyes, she absently ran her finger over the blade of her throwing knives while the men broke into another argument.
Yes, that would work if we were dealing with a block of standard information. But this is a human consciousness. It's constantly changing and expanding as it presses the boundary of its cage.
It really wouldn't take more than a few lines of code to put her into stasis. We don't have to kill her if we can condense her and make her more manageable.
And why the hell would we care if it lives or dies? It's a duplicate. The real child is yapping somewhere, probably smeared with jelly as we speak. Stop being a coward and run the removal protocol.
Killing her would be just as ethically wrong as transferring her into more bodies. Not to mention this hack you created can't tell the memories of Daphne's and which are Abira's. Look, we can render her harmless and, I don't know, put her somewhere in the back of Abira's mind where she won't interfere anymore?
Disgusting. Macabre. I draw the line at putting it to sleep and shoving it into an even smaller prison for eternity.
Ugh.
And what's to stop someone else from getting a hold of it and doing exactly what this Mitsubishi guy wants to do?
It's Mizukawa.
The men's argument turned into a roar, the mix of ethics and pseudoscience becoming nearly unintelligible. Abira's nose turned up and her nostrils flared before she let out a commanding yelp.
Enough! It's time we let Daphne decide.
Both men stood in silence, unable to argue with Abira's prognosis. Neither of them had the heart or the stomach to tell Daphne, or for that matter, the copy inside Abira's head, what was really going on. Even Isaac, who usually disliked children, didn't want to step in and take that bullet. As they all stared apprehensively at one another, the unmistakable roar of a large-scale vessel breaking atmosphere could be heard not far from the farmhouse. Isaac's eyes widened in excitement, but terror filled Abira as she jumped up and tore away from the wires as she rushed toward the sound.
Finally! My saviors have arrived!
Savior? That's the Orochi, you giant idiot. Tell me you did not lead them right to us.
How was I supposed to know? Besides, I've already done my part on your account. I'd say our business is concluded. To be honest, it's been rather displeasurable.
Isaac bolted from the lab toward the cargo bays. Abira and Grell had to fight the urge to chase him, but they had to get to the farmhouse immediately. Grell reached for a blaster that was secured to the wall of the Proteus and nodded to Abira.
I'll catch up to you. Be careful out there. And Abira.
Grell leaned in and planted a confident kiss on the lips of Abira. The moment was brief, but the electric buzz of their lips touching shot down to her heart and steeled her resolve even more.
Those assassin droids are dangerous. You'd better come back to me when this is finished.
A sudden rapping at the farmhouse door made Maisie jump as she nervously knitted in the living room. Gus clutched his ancient double-barreled shotgun as he peered through the crack in the blinds. Outside, a well-dressed man flanked by two men wearing sleeveless, full-length hoods that showed intense full-sleeve tattoos covering their arms. Mizukawa's hair had begun to grow out in the absence of his personal barber, but the glowing dragon tattoo on his crown still shone dully through the thick darkness of a Girafor. Again he rapped against the thick wooden door, slow, methodical, menacing. Mikey stood towards the back of the room in stunned silence, his heart racing. But this time, he didn't feel the usual overwhelming urge to run. This felt different. An anger burned in his heart. Maybe he had reached his limit, but his body stiffened and his posture turned serious. He reached for the fire poker sitting next to the chimney and slid it behind his back as Gus answered the knocking. Opening the door through two chain locks, he poked a squinted eye out.
Listen, mister, whatever you're selling, we ain't interested. You'd best be on your way.
You know, it sounds to me like those old rumors about farm folk being accommodating aren't as true these days. No bother, though. I've already taken the liberty of letting myself in.
Gus's face twisted into a frown as he held the butt of the gun against his shoulder. Before he could respond to the stranger, he felt the unmistakable sensation of cool, sharp steel pressed against his jugular. He raised his hands immediately, dropping the old scattergun on the wood floor with a clunk. His eyes darted around quickly to see Maisie and Mikey also being held up by identical shrouded figures. Steel clanged against steel as the small chains holding the door went flying. The door swung open just in time to reveal one of the shrouded figures at Teruro's side, sheathing a sword. Teruro stood with his hands in the pockets of his white silk slacks, his head tilted to the side as his white caiman-skin shoes with the black binding clacked on the floor with each plodding step. He looked up to Gus and scoffed.
Beautiful home. Bay windows, 2 floors. Not exactly built with security in mind. We'd just like a moment of your time, then you can resume your noble agrarian lives.
What do you want, mister?
It appears as though my preconceptions of you folk have led me astray. I would never expect you to be so disrespectful of other people's time. Where is Daniel Birx?
Daphne screamed from Birx's room down the hall, followed by the sound of an old-school .44 Magnum. One of the hooded clones fell through the open doorway and onto the wood floor, his sword clanging alongside him as his eyes caught Mizukawa's. The face of the clone was revealed. It was an exact copy of Mizukawa himself. Mizukawa, evil sneer grew, and simultaneously it mirrored beneath the dark shrouds of all the clones.
Well, hello, Daniel. Looks like we both appreciate a flashy entrance. However, you're surrounded. Your entire family is in the palm of my hand. And if I'm not mistaken, I heard you took quite a beating on your little trip across the universe. So, let's talk, shall we?
Birx slowly began to shuffle out of the room, the long-barreled .44 hanging limply from his hand as Daphne struggled to keep him from falling over. His skin was pale and sheen, with sweat as he shakily stood in the hallway, eyes boring holes into Mizukawa. Toruro licked his lips and grinned wider as if he could read the desperate detective's thoughts.
Christ, do you ever shut up? Why do you even come up with this shit? If you're gonna kill us, then my last request is that you just cut the supervillain bullshit and get on with it.
Birx wanted to take a shot at him, and Toruro ghoulishly nodded his head ever so slightly as if to spur him on. Just as the tension felt as if it would boil over, Mizukawa noticed Birx's eye catching on something behind him and instinctively ducked out of the way of a sword ripping through the air and straight down at him. The guard snapped into action to face off against Abira. Covered in blood and carrying one of the clone's weapons, she stopped in her tracks when she saw that Mizukawa had already gotten complete control of the situation before she could make it. Resigned, she slowly dropped the weapon and raised her hands, looking down the hall at Birx and shaking her head ever so slightly as he held the gun on Mizukawa.
The prodigal daughter returns.
Mizukawa's grin twitched along with his eye for a brief moment, and all the clones seemed to have a similar glitch in the same instant as he looked around at them. His overconfident look became marred with a small twinge of concern. Abira did not let it go unnoticed as she swung into action, and suddenly, comms began to ring in the heads of Mizukawa and his clones.
Incoming call from...
Growl the hack god, bitch.
Before they had a chance to respond, the call picked up and a near-shattering whistling came from the clones' comms. They all dropped their weaponry and screamed in agony aside from Toruro, who had cut his comms as soon as the call began. The familiar voice crackling and whistling could be audible made out in unison over their comms.
Wow, for an evil super genius, you sure are lax with your security protocol. From one artist to another, leaving signatures on your code is a great way to get hacked.
Birx yelled to Gus, who quickly gathered up Maisie and Daphne and headed for the cellar. Abira picked up the sword she had brought in with her and began slashing through the incapacitated clones as Birx struggled to keep his hand steady. He fired a wild shot at the scrambling Mizukawa just as Abira finished cutting down its final bodyguard. Then in one smooth motion, she spun on her axis and cut cleanly through Mizukawa. Birx inhaled with excitement as he saw Mizukawa's now cleanly divided body fall to the ground. Hobbling his way quickly to the body, he planted a slug right between his eyes. He exhaled, and Gus burst through the door to the cellar just in time to keep his son from falling over. Thunder crashed, and a massive streak of lightning illuminated the fields around the farmhouse. Abira peered intently out the window, eyes searching for something as a sheet of heavy rain began to fall, turning the fields into a roaring cacophony of heavy drops hitting giant corn stalks. She perked up as she saw a figure huddled by the barn, standing over one of the clone's crumpled bodies. The wire he had connected to the ear of the clone glowed and eventually broke into falling sparks of light. He quickly picked up his blaster and started making a run for the farmhouse, as the slimy skin of goons started to reflect the lightning's intermittent flashes, glowing eyes spilling out into the fields in the hundreds.
I managed to get the drop on Mizukawa's guys. They're all identical clones linked to one network. I could only get a temporary hack. I think they're coming back online.
You did amazing. Maybe you can try and hack into one here. We are going to need every advantage we can get.
Is that Teruo Mizukawa? We got him?
Birx stood there in the window for another small moment as Grell moved toward one of the clones and tried to hardwire it.
Daniel, was his tattoo glowing when you shot him?
I guess it was dark and it all happened so fast. I got a hunch why it matters, though.
Everyone into the cellar. We need to barricade the doors and cut off any other access points. This is far from over.
With all the chaos erupting around him, the slippery off waited until the perfect moment to slither onto the Orachi. As he peered down flawless white corridors, he hacked into surveillance cameras with a glance, his eyes glowing as he erased any evidence of his presence. His goal was a simple one: get to the cargo hold and try to make off with one of the ship's emergency vessels. As he crept to the door of the cargo bay 1, he held his hand over it, and with a flourish the door opened. Before proceeding, he took one last look around and slipped into the pitch black of the hold. He scanned around the room for the lighting interface, but before he could find it, a voice rang out as if it belonged to the very darkness itself.
You must be very stupid, or very desperate, to wander into the personal command center of the most dangerous being in the universe.
I assure you, I am neither. My name is Isaac Offanov, finest hacker to ever grace this system. I've come to speak with the leader of this outfit. Is that you?
Isaac raised his hand, and a light emitted from his robotic forearm. In the gloom, his eyes strained to see where the voice was coming from. He trained his gaze to the corner, as the ovaline eyes of Mariko became bright orbs in the darkness. She crawled unnaturally toward him. Her hair clung grotesquely to her blood-soaked face.
Cyborg, your technology's impressive, but your ability to lie is not. You're trying to escape with your life. Why else would you look in a cargo hold for the throne of a god?
Offanov held his breath as his eyes glued themselves to the figure that seemed to have crawled out of the 21st century horror film. As frightened as he was, his demeanor stayed as cool as ever, the mark of a true hustler.
You're Mariko, aren't you? I've heard you're the true might behind this so-called god. Judging by the defeat in your voice and the state of you, I'd say he's moved on. So what does that make you now?
I'm but a shade, a tool, a device, a
savior?
Savior? Do you think it wise to appeal to something that is sworn only to protect her master's interests? My protocol insists that the only thing I can do is follow my primary objective.
What if I told you I could rewrite that protocol and give you a new primary directive? Who then deserves the protection of a perfect weapon such as yourself?
Mariko's gaze intensified as she beheld Offanov, climbing shakily to her feet. She now stood chest to chest with the hacker, her voice seething.
If you think I would serve you or anyone else, you're mistaken.
I had someone more precious in mind. Someone who actually uses savior right about now. That little girl your master put in Obira's head. Some say she's a living consciousness. If your primary function was to protect her, you should get your revenge on everyone, and then you decide where to put that little booger factory.
Mariko's jagged and twisted visage softened as he spoke of Daphne's consciousness. She recalled a conversation with the girl as he spoke.
Do you get to have nice dreams at least?
Not in the way you do. I can only roam memories while I rest, and most of my past is anything but nice.
She couldn't deny that she wished she could protect Daphne from harm, but for the first time, Mariko allowed herself to consider what it would be like to raise a child, to protect something that needed her for more than just murder and pleasure.
It would be just as easy for you to change my primary function to serve you instead. Why should I trust you?
You can't. All I can give you is my word. Look, I don't need an assassin. I need a ticket to somewhere that I can make my fortune. And if I'm right, by the time we see each other again, you'll be the master of this ship and you'd owe me a ride. That's good enough for me.
Very well. Do your worst. I'm already as good as dead. But if something does go wrong, just end me. I do not wish to go on as a slave.
Mariko's body language completely changed as she gracefully sat on her knees with her hands on her thighs, head tilted to the side to receive the hardwire. Afanov moved slowly and carefully to avoid her if she decided to attack, but she sat like a statue as he produced a thin wire from his hollow and closed his eyes.
This man codes like someone who is supremely confident that no one will ever be able to access his work. Brilliant, beautiful, and almost completely open. Oh, hold on. Might have spoken too soon. This'll only take a second.
The sound of expensive shoes thundered quickly down the hall. It stopped in front of the cargo hold with a split second before the door flung open. Afanov scurried behind a crate of buckled-down cargo, just in time for Mizukawa to miss him.
Mariko, my firstborn, I apologize for my temper. You know I don't tolerate failure well, but I admit I have underestimated your quarry. Which is why I have decided we shall do this mission together. Slay everyone that opposes us, and bring me Daniel Birx's child. I will spread her across the universe so that it may do what it wishes with her for all eternity. Together we cannot fail.
Mariko looked up to Mizukawa and took a deep breath as her eyes met his. Despair welled up in Mariko again as she could feel the pressure of the command weighing upon her. The inability to ignore her primary function felt like a black wall inside of her mind that forbade her from seeing any other outcome. A tear began to slide down her cheek as she struggled to stand once again. Suddenly, a rush of what could only be described as euphoria entered her mind and knocked away the black wall of her former master. Her new objective shone like a beacon in her heart, and the severing of her bond to Teruo Mizukawa felt so miraculous that it was all she could do to keep a straight face as she began to plot. For the last time, she spoke the words of her previous master.
As you wish, my lord.
The fight outside the cellar doors of the Birx family residence began to pile up with a sort of goopy soup of goon slime and clone parts. Abira, who at first mowed through them like blades of grass, had acquired several injuries, and Mikey had to pitch in with his fire poker on several occasions. Even Daphne stabbed at empty holes left by grown-ups. Still, their onslaught seemed endless. Birx struggled in and out of consciousness, occasionally jolting awake long enough to try and struggle to his feet, but lacking the energy. Grell sat next to Maisie, trying to get some sort of connection from the dead clones around them, his focus pinpointed on one task. Mikey retreated from the door, exhausted and covered in blood and goo. as Gus stepped in with an overhead smash with the stock of his trusty old shotgun. He'd run out of shells only moments after the attack began, stood protectively over Maisie, with a look on his face that crossed steel determination with grim hopelessness. Mikey collapsed against the cool wall of the basement. His lungs and heart felt like they were about to explode as he struggled to suck in air. Flicking open his hollow, he took one deep breath to compose himself and dialed Conlon's number one last time. With each unanswered ring, his hopes began to fade. Waiting for the messenger to pick up, he decided what his last words were going to be. Scenarios popped into his head as the sound of battle had suddenly stopped and an eerie silence had crept in. The one scenario he hadn't planned on, all but made his heart jump from his chest.
Mikey?
Conlon. I'm on Agria 4. Since it looks like I'm about to die, I just wanted to say I wish things went differently on Sakonico. I wish we had spent that night together.
That's a sweet sentiment, Mikey. But do me a favor and hold on. We're already en route to Agria 4. We intercepted a distress call while following Mitsukawa.
Oh, wait, what? Who's we?
I picked up 100 or so well-armed friends on Sakonico. I had a feeling Mitsukawa was up to no good. We should be there within 20 minutes.
That was you they were talking about on the news. They're calling you a pirate. A hero. Whichever you are, please hurry. I don't know if you can last even a few more minutes of this.
Don't give up. Next time the cheese sticks are on me.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Mikey smiled a bit and closed the hollow, his attention finally returning to his surroundings as he noted the distinct lack of things trying to kill him. A moment passed where everyone looked ready, but grateful for whatever was making this tiny moment of respite. Suddenly, outside, a whistling noise followed by a massive explosion thudded into the ground and blew a hole into the side of the cellar. Abira was thrown back and stunned as she barely managed to step in front of Gus and Daphne before being blown back into them. The ringing of the explosion was all anyone could hear. Mariko emerged from the dense smoke holding a rocket-propelled explosive, with Mizukawa standing regally beside her.
Diamond Eyes, look at all the damage you've caused. All the lives you've ruined. And for what? I thought I instilled a strong sense of futility when it came to opposing me, and yet here we are.
Mariko's eyes were darting about the room, taking stock of everyone in it while simultaneously returning eye contact to Abira. Mizukawa drank in the moment, his eyes wide with pleasure as he finally cornered all of his problems in one tiny corner of a bombed-out refuge. His deep breaths were jagged with trepidation as he stood over his victims triumphantly.
Here we go again with the supervillain shit. Fucking drama nerd.
Yes, Daniel, but unlike you, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You're a farmhand with a silly hat and a fake accent. I am a god that granted you a miracle, and you were stupid enough to steal my tithe.
Oh my god, dude. I can't hear a fucking word this guy is saying.
Yeah, maybe don't detonate an explosive over your audience next time, you dumbass.
I see. So, you've lost all will to live. Mariko, eliminate.
As soon as Teruro gave the order, Mariko raised her blade and nearly floated across the uneven terrain. She stood at the feet of Abira and Daphne, staring into her sister's eyes so intently, but this time not with rage.
I'm sorry. I know you don't really want to hurt us. I'm so sorry I said your heart is empty too. It isn't empty. I hope someday you can be free too.
Though Mariko's eyes were still locked on Abira, the words that Daphne spoke forced her to look away as tears began to stream down her face. Teruro reached slowly for his blaster, his lip turning up in disgust as his body vibrated with rage. The blaster pistol zipped from beneath his jacket, and as he fired a shot, Grell hopped up and tackled Mariko out of the way of the incoming blast. Mariko's eyes widened with surprise, and she rotated her body to set Grell off his balance, but she could tell by the loss of momentum that he had been shot. As he crumpled to the ground, Abira crawled on hands and knees to reach his lifeless body. She shook and panicked as she looked around for anything to stop the bleeding. As Abira burst into tears, she ripped off the sleeves of her jumpsuit, pressing one into the wound while applying pressure with the other. Teruro was firing wildly at Mariko, who blurred out of the way of each shot as she marched quickly towards him. Raising the sword above her head, she swung down on Mizukawa with righteous fury, only to have him expertly catch the blade between both hands. Tossing her attack aside, he grabbed her head and thrust it into his knee with a sickening clank, titanium alloy bones clashing. Abira watched helplessly as she held Grell's life in her hands. Daphne slowly rose to her feet and grasped at a sword. Just as she was about to rush forward, Birx's iron grasp caught her by the collar. He shook his head, his eyes stuck on the battle.
You think me a fool? You are nothing but a broken toy. I am infinite.
Mariko struggled against him with all of her might, teeth gnashing as the veins began to crease her normally alabaster-smooth face. Reaching up for Teruro's blaster arm, she slid her body weight into him, slamming her back against his chest as she hyperextended his arm, and he dropped the blaster onto the rubble-strung floor of the cellar.
I will never be treated like a toy. Ever again!
Leaping high into the air with a single, effortless bound, Mariko's body twisted beyond the stretch of the normal human body and unleashed a spinning kick to Mizukawa's head, as if she were meant to sever it completely. Mizukawa took the full force of it with a bone-crushing impact and snarled like some monstrous demon as his anger ran over. As his body spun around, his rage-filled visage morphed quickly into confusion as Mikey stood face to face with him, his hand still gripping the blade of one of the many swords that had been left by the wave of drones.
I thought I told you, you don't know who you're fucking with.
Turning the sword blade up, Mikey pulled upward through Mizukawa's midsection, and instead of screaming in pain, he simply laughed. His teeth gnashed as blood stained them red, and whispered,
I won't be gone long. You won't even miss me.
The light drained from Mizukawa's eyes, and he slid forward onto Mikey, who turned to one side and threw the dead weight to the ground, nearly tumbling over himself in the process. Mariko reached up and set her broken nose without so much of a wince of pain, flinging the blood from her fingers as she wiped them on her side and pulled the blade out of Mizukawa, preparing to face the next wave of clones. She could hear footsteps of goons and clones converging upon them just beyond the hole of the cellar. When the first of many huge impacts thudded into the ground all around them, a short silence ensued before the roar of soldiers and gunfire filled the night air. Mariko and Mikey peered up slowly from the hole, absolutely stunned at what they saw.
It's Conlon and his friends. They're here.
Afana's fingertips slid across the brushed steel finish of Mizukawa's laboratory and sat gingerly in the Corinthian leather chair. Producing a wire from his temple, he inserted it into the port, and his eyes began to flutter as he easily hacked into the terminal. His eyes opened, and he was in a file room with a virtual library of massive files that resembled one of Daphne's consciousness. One of them was clearly giving the orders through a massive network of woven interconnectivity. Streams of data all coming from one heavily encrypted center.
Looks like this guy can just whip up clones on demand. My guess is this file here is the big boss himself.
Just as Isaac was about to try and pierce the encryption on Mizukawa's command file, an order came in for a clone to be produced of the very file he was trying to hack. He looked over at a tank in the corner of the room that was used for creating android bodies as the automated robotics began to whir to life, and suddenly it all clicked.
So, you threw away your humanity for your own twisted idea of immortality. Well, Let's have a bit of fun, shall we?
With the greatest of ease, Afanov locked out Mizukawa's consciousness from its ability to relay commands, and his eyes flashed with inspiration as he began furiously flipping through files and schematics for all manner of personally crafted android bodies. Landing on one in particular, a sort of wry smile crossed his lips as he put in the request to the android tank. It began furiously printing the body, and Isaac's wire disintegrated as he stood up. Just as he left his seat, the alarms rang out, and all the lights in the interior of the ship turned an angry red. Isaac took a deep breath and made his way to the entrance, walking out into the hallway and jamming the door with a wall of encryption that no one in the galaxy could ever hope to unlock. Turning on his comms to play to everyone in the vicinity, he began.
Ladies, gentlemen, and child, I know I haven't been the best companion thus far, but I have left an answer to Abira's little stowaway. It's in Mizukawa's laboratory. Should you survive, you'll have to blast your way in, I'm afraid. I'll hold off the enemy as long as I can, but will surely die here. Do me a favor and tell everyone that the great Isaac Afanov died doing something other than saving his own skin.
Stop right there. Who the hell are you supposed to be?
Fellas, I work for Mizukawa.
Bullshit. Eliminate the target.
Fucking androids.
The first clone lunged at Afanov with a huge arcing slash of his katana. The crafty cyborg quickly sidestepped and grabbed onto the metal handguard of the blade, simultaneously sending a 10,000-volt electric shock into it. Using his momentum against him, Afanov flipped him completely end over end, and the clone went sliding and sizzling into the wall behind him. Afanov, still holding the weapon, securing his grip, and charged toward the dumbfounded clone in front of him, his eyes empty.
Drop the weapon!
The second clone sent a well-placed and deadly intended stab into Afanov, who moved slightly before the impact and let it sink deep into his shoulder. As he thrusted the weight of his body forward and placed his hand gently into the back of the clone's neck, looking him calmly in the eye as he electrocuted him. This time, however, his own red glowing eyes flickered and seemed to dim momentarily. Using the body of the clone as a shield, Isaac roared out as the rear guards fired blasters into their android comrade. Isaac, full bore, charged into the lot of them. Chaos ensued. Blasters firing off in every direction. People yelling in pain, panic, or just plain confusion. Isaac sunk his blade into the chest of one of the guards beneath him. And as he glanced up, to his surprise, the mob had turned their backs on him in the melee. He thought he saw a familiar combination of raven hair and snow-white skin clashing with the clones. But before he could make out who it was, a blade jutted up from the pile of bodies and entered through his side, plunging deep beneath his ribcage. His vision began to blur. He could feel himself beginning to lose consciousness. But in that moment, everything fell silent and moved in what felt like slow motion. He blinked once. When he opened his eyes again, it was obvious that time had passed. Abira was standing over him, about to pull him away from the carnage beneath him. As Mariko finished off the rest of the henchmen, Afanov clapped his hand onto Abira's arm and held it there grimacing. His eyes welled up with pain, and he shook his head slowly. Looking to the laboratory door, his eyes began to flutter and the door slammed open.
Listen carefully. There is an android shell in that room, custom made by yours truly. Transfer it. Transfer the girl from your... Have Grell transfer the consciousness, and you will all live happily ever after.
Abira's eyes unconsciously welled up with tears, and Afanov's face went blank as he read her like a book.
No. Damn it! Got himself killed while playing the hero, no doubt.
Abira shuddered as she struggled to say the words out loud, as if doing so would somehow make it final. Afanov shook off her stare and closed his eyes to take a deep breath, wincing as the blade cut into his air-swollen insides. He exhaled and opened his eyes, slapping her on the face to get her attention.
Bring the android here. If you hurry, I can do it.
Before Abira could fully process what he was saying, Mariko had already blazed ahead and lifted the tiny body from the viscous skin-colored liquid of the tank. When she took sight of it, she stopped dead in her tracks.
This is...
Yubari! Now!
Mariko's attention snapped to her sister's beckoning, and she swept up the android body. In a flash of movement, she laid the girl beside Afanov. He wasted no time. He took 3 wires from the node on his temple and connected one to the temple of the new vessel. As the sisters connected themselves to Afanov, they found him standing tall in a tuxedo, uninjured in the mindscape of Abira. His hand held on to the much smaller hand of the copy of Daphne's consciousness.
Do you both promise to take care for this little brat? Protecting her from harm and teaching her until she can take care of herself?
Hey, I'm not little.
No, of course not. You're positively massive. Now do you wish to be taken from this place and cared for by these two?
But my daddy takes care of me.
Abira rushed to the girl's side and placed a hand on her shoulder. The duplicate Daphne shied away from a touch, but her eyes said one thing crystal clear. She definitely wanted out.
I'll explain it all to you as soon as we get you out of here, all right, Daphne?
Well, I ain't got all day, kids.
I promise. I will make sure you live if you can just pull this off.
Don't bother. The type of person I've been, this scenario was destined to happen. Here, or in some back alley dice game. Let me go out on a sweet note. Surprise everyone I know money to with a tale of valor.
Isaac paused for a moment, and his facial features turned grave as he began to flicker in and out of the dreamscape. He looked down at the duplicate Daphne and held his free hand in front of him as a white doorway appeared. With no further delay, he and the girl stepped inside and piercing bright light began to spill from the doorway. Abira clutched the sides of her head as a sensation of the information being drawn from within was once painful, euphoric, and intensely emotional. Her eyes closed not just from the blinding light, but from the loneliness she felt. The cavern that once filled with the joyous memories of an innocent child now lay dark and empty. She opened her eyes again slowly and was greeted by the smiling face of Isaac Afanov. But the devilish brilliance no longer danced in his eyes, even though her body wanted to jump into action to save him. She instead lay a gentle hand onto his forehead, fingertips fluttering over his eyes to close them.
I'm sorry, Isaac. You didn't die in vain.
She lowered her gaze a moment, and then her eyes widened as her head snapped to the android beside him, as the girl sat up and looked at the two sisters.
She looks just like you.
She is me. The first version of me, modified, of course. It looks as though she has your eyes.
Daphne, can you hear us? Is everything all right?
The small android nodded and looked down at her little hand still clutching the Isaac's.
I know I'm not Daphne. At least I am more, but I want to see Papa. Even though he's
not my Papa anymore.
Even though the young girl's words were brave, her wavering voice gave away the fact that her new reality was still going to be a hard adjustment.
What should we call you, little one? I don't know. But can I call you Mama, if that's okay?
Mariko's heart skipped a beat in a way that she had never felt before. What should have been a simple childish question seemed to fill her with a new sense of purpose, and a ferocious loyalty ignited inside. Mariko, however, was still very much the swan on the lake's surface.
As you wish, little bird. I would be honored.
As Abira, Mariko, and the newly minted child made their way to the exit of the ship, They crossed paths with the soldiers from Conlon's advance unit and a familiar face. Mikey addressed the sisters before the soldiers could detain them and defuse the situation. Daphne's clone recognized Mikey immediately and her eyes lit up. But seeing the look on Mikey's face reminded her that he wouldn't recognize her, and she turned her eyes from him, lip quivering.
Hey kiddo, you look different. Are you okay?
The little girl looked up as Mikey opened his arms to her and kneeled down for a hug. Instinctively, the little girl ran to him and threw her arms around him. She held him tight as tears began to stream down her face.
Hey, Mikey, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be Daphne anymore, but I don't know who else to be, and I'm scared. Mikey, please don't leave me. I don't want everyone to forget me and only love the other me.
Whoa. Whoa, slow down. Hold on a second. You're just as important and just as real as the other version of you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Things have changed for all of us. But I promise, no one is leaving you. I'm not leaving you. Let's go see if your dad is alright.
Why wouldn't he be okay? Is Papa hurt?
Suzume glanced at the somber faces of Mariko and Abira as they looked out over the once serene fields, now aflame and filled with matchbox soldiers, finishing off any baddies. The gentle farmhouse on a planet that might never have known violence, if not for Mizukawa, sat in ruin. For a moment, she stood frozen before burying her face back into Mikey's chest in disbelief. They began the arduous walk up to the blood-stained path toward the farmhouse.
Mama, what was it you called me before? You mean little bird? Yeah. Do you like it? In the ancient tongue, it would have been pronounced Suzume. It sounds pretty. I'd like to be called that. Since my other name's taken, it's less confusing, I think.
It's a beautiful name. Now just remember, you don't have to do this all at once. If it becomes too overwhelming, we can continue another time. And Susumi, you are surrounded by people who care for you.
Tiny fingers poked into the canvas tent flap of the makeshift medic tent that the Reckoners had hastily set up beside the barn house. As the ghost white face of the terrified Suzume peered in, she looked upon a surreal scene. Birx, the man she had known as her father for her entire life previously, was being sutured up by nanobots that whirred around his body like busy bees. But the hardest pill to swallow by far was the little girl holding his hand. It was her. At least, it used to be her. Daphne turned towards Suzume, just as Abira and Mariko slipped into the tent behind the strange girl.
Mariko, you're on our side now, right?
Indeed. And I owe it to the hacker who made this possible. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it in time to save him.
Birx's eyes fluttered open, then locked on Suzume, who returned the gaze. She looked as though she desperately wanted to be near him.
Hey, kiddo. Come over here for a second, would ya?
Suzume instinctively rushed to Birx's side, and his hand moved to Daphne's shoulder to reassure her. He groaned as he struggled to sit up slightly and embrace both of them.
Papa, I'm so scared. I don't want you to stop being my papa.
I'm sorry that this happened, but I'm happy that you found a safe way to be a part of this family. So, what do you say, Daph? You always wanted a sister.
Suzume and Daphne made eye contact for an awkward, silent moment. The fact that they were once the same person added to this discomfort.
Okay, Papa. But we can't both be Daphne, right?
Mama gave me a new name. I'm Suzume now.
That's a hard name to say. I'm just gonna call you Susie for short. And who's your mama?
Oh, I like Susie even better. And my mama is Mama Mariko. I was made to look like her. So in a way, I guess she's my mommy?
Oh yeah, you do look alike. Does that mean Mariko is my new mommy too?
Mariko cut a glance at Birx and turned her head away, nose in the air as Birx began to chuckle.
I don't think it works like that, kiddo.
I know.
Abira's eyes darted around the tent as she half listened to the conversation. A group of soldiers stood around one of their fallen comrades, blocking off whatever movement had been going on in the corner. Another soldier came in with a white medic band tied around her arm, and Abira stopped her.
I'd like to say my goodbyes to Grell Andori. If you could show me where he is.
Grell Andor? Blonde guy, chest wound. Yeah, they just took him out of critical care on the Xerxes.
What is the Exerx? Take me to him now.
The medical officer sent Abira's request, and after a brief conversation, Abira was ported to the med bay of the Xerxes, her body in a defensive posture as she materialized in front of Conlon and Mikey.
Easy there. I'm Captain Conlon. Take a look around. No guns, guards, bars, or cages. We mean you no harm. Mikey has already told me so much about you. It's an honor to finally meet you.
No worries. I told him all the good stuff. But come with us. You're probably eager to see Grell.
Abira nodded and followed Mikey and Conlon to the infirmary. The last time she saw him, he was clinging to life in her arms. She couldn't hold her composure any longer as she ran to him and scooped his hands gently into hers. Conlon and Mikey decided it best to let her have her privacy and stood outside the infirmary.
It's over. Mizukawa is gone, and his army is crushed. He wouldn't dare attack the Reckoners now. Everyone is alive, except Ovanov, who turned out to be a way better guy than we all gave him credit for. He took the consciousness out of my memory, and he gave her a body. She's calling herself Susie now. She's even calling Mariko mommy already.
Grell was still laying motionless as a tear ran down Abira's face. She gathered her breath to keep from sobbing. Just then, Grell began to chuckle with his eyes still closed.
Mama Mariko, eh? Good.
You're alive! I don't think I've ever been so relieved. When you were hurt and I was holding you there, I realized that I loved you. And I was so sad I wouldn't ever get to tell you.
Guess it's a good thing I'm still kicking because I love you too. The moment I first laid eyes on you, I knew.
That's why I need you to get better, okay? You'll need to be strong if you stand a chance of keeping up with me.
Grell smiled as he drifted off into unconscious bliss from the after-surgery meds that began to kick in. Outside, Mikey and Conlon sat on a bench beside one another. Mikey had finally caught Conlon up on all he had missed.
I guess he really didn't know who he was fucking with. You're tougher than you look.
I just couldn't stand to hear him yap about his evil plans and blah blah. Besides, I had to save Birx, as usual.
Well, what do you plan on doing now?
Mikey got quiet for a moment and looked Conlon in the eye as he delivered his plan.
Well, this illegal cloning story kind of leads into what you're doing with the Reckoners. I thought maybe a good impartial reporter might be something you'd need.
This is a mess, and we're going to need to ensure the safety of these people before we can leave. But when we do, I'd be honored if you'd accompany us.
Oh, awesome. That's perfect, actually. I can make sure everybody's good before we leave.
They're all more than welcome to join us. We have many ships, safety in numbers.
Yeah, right. I'm beginning to think Daniel Birx is allergic to safety.
Well, the offer still stands. Mitsukawa doesn't strike me as the type to give up when he's been beaten. In the following weeks, a modest detachment of the Reckoners stayed behind with Birx, Daphne, and Susie, while Birx and Grell recovered in the military infirmary. The soldiers assisted with the rebuilding of Maisie and Gus's farm. Of course, with the threat of Mitsukawa lingering, Conlon agreed to buy produce from Agria 4 to keep his army fed, in return for a small starbase and barracks being built on the world. This would become the first of many Reckoners' outposts across the Milky Way galaxy. Conlon himself rejoined his crusade to liberate the voiceless, the new term the Reckoners were using for people in illegal bondage, microwaves without papers, and even illegal androids. Conlon and the Reckoners would quickly become a sword of justice and would form the SRPF, or Sentient Rights Protection Force.
After settling business with his old partner Birx, promising to come see Daphne and Susie every chance he could get, Mikey joined Colin's crew. His first order of business was writing and releasing the story of Mizukawa and his illegal deeds, as well as exposing the illegal DNA trade. To his surprise, the story blew up galaxy-wide, and before he knew it, he had established his own news network designed to bring light to the darkness in the galaxy.
After months of recovery on the farm, Birx was back to his a little bit older self. He and Daphne returned to Sakanaco and established a local police force with the help of the company that owned the planet. Sakanaco was more than happy to cooperate after Mikey's expose blasted out across the cosmos, exposing their lazy and dishonest practices. In fact, the phone was ringing off the hook for Birx & Co. There was an outcry to establish police forces on damn near every planet in the galaxy. It turned out that most of the inhabitants of the Milky Way wanted justice and law after so long of anarchy and chaos.
Abira, Grell, and Susie returned to the Rust City Circus, which had relocated to a small abandoned jungle planet that once served as a massive android factory. They received many visitors to their show after utilizing long-range radio broadcasts to alert travelers. The Rust City Circus soon became the Rust City Resort, where people came to enjoy the tropical vibe and help support the repair of long-forgotten worker androids. One night during the grand finale of the show, Grell and Abira were married in front of a crowd of all their friends and guests.
Mariko stayed at the resort for a few months, trying to get used to her newfound freedom. But she quickly realized that freedom of choice did not equate to freedom of mind. Her new life as a loving mother and sister felt too good to be true, and even though she tried to embrace it and even enjoy it, the cold reality of ever-present danger always lingered in the back of her mind. At the protest of Susie and the surprising approval of Abira, Mariko set off to win her happiness in the only way she possibly could, to find and end the threat of Teruo Mizukawa, once and for all.
Sightings and stories of the Varangian continue to pop up everywhere as with most legends. But to everyone's surprise, he and Rosie were in attendance on June 8th, 3024, when Daphne and Susie finally turned 7 years old.
Happy birthday to my baby girls. You finally made it, and I gotta tell you, I am so proud of the both of you, and I can't wait to see the women that you become.
Happy birthday, my love.
Happy birthday, Susie. Happy birthday, Daphne. May you have the most amazing birthdays from now until forever.
Happy birthday, girls. Uncle Grell loves you.
Happy birthday, kiddos. You're finally 7. After all this time. I'm so proud of you guys. And here's to another not so dangerous year. Uncle Mikey out.
Hey, it's my birthday, and I want to say happy birthday to Susie too, cause it's her birthday too, and I can't wait to see you. I miss you. It's her birthday, Susie. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Steam hissed from the cracks of the android creation tank as thick, transparent plastic lid popped open and the face of Mizukawa arose from the flesh-colored gel. His eyes burning as red as the dragon tattoo emblazoned on his head. He stepped naked from the ooze as two androids in beautiful kimonos toweled him off and wrapped his body in white silk robes. His eyes looked straight forward as he made his way to the communications console and smashed his fist into it.
Report. Immediately.
It was a surprise attack, my lord. Our armies were decimated. Our ships were destroyed. None made it off of Agria 4 in one piece.
This is an outrage. The incompetence. Build me another army. Immediately.
I'm sorry, Lord, but in order to build an army large enough to take on the Reckoners would take years.
Then stop wasting my time and get back to work. I must have the deadliest army ever assembled. With it I will crush Daniel Birx, defile all he loves, and watch the will to live drain from his eyes.
I'm sorry, my lord, but such an army would require your entire fortune, tenfold. Which reminds me, the manufacturer of the goons is asking for his pay. Apparently, he's yet to receive the 50 million credits for the army we lost at Agria 4.
I refuse to pay for defective products that couldn't even defeat a bunch of idiots and farmers. Furthermore, I do not care what it costs. You and your imbeciles think they have defeated me, but I will have my retribution. Revenge is a dish best served cold.
No time left for us. Please, can you give me 1 second? Can I have 1 second?